Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artist Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast brought to you by the South Coast Artist Index. And we have a return guest. And the reason why this guest is returning is, well, you heard this story once. This is a follow-up to it. And I got to say that there are a lot of people whose jaws are very slack when they hear about this individual artist's journey. And I really believe he's almost like that little, the little choo-choo train that could, I think I can, and he does. So anyway, without further ado, yes, please introduce yourself and spell your name.
William Kennedy, William Kennedy.
You must have I always try to find a story in somebody's name, but with you, if I was just to read your name, okay, William Collin Kennedy, you tell me what I'm thinking.
Right. White man
with red hair and green eyes, right?
Irish. I mean, it's in my blood for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's all.
I've done the DNA test and all that stuff, so I know the percentages and all that. So
yeah, that's a whole nother story for another day. Because man, let me tell you, I've been doing a lot of reading, and there's a great book I just finished called Dry Long Sew.
What is it?
Dry Long Sew. It's okay. I don't want to say Southern slang, but there's a lot of Southern words that just don't bubble up here up north.
Right.
And Dry Long Sew translates out. Don't forget too, you've got a lot of the Gullah people, so you have some of these little bits and pieces of language still hang in there. Just like in Roots, he had a couple of keywords, and that's where he went on. But it means average.
Okay.
And it's an autobiography of Black America. And what's really cool about it is that none of these people that he has interviewed, who you would think of as, they run male, female, and their age group is from the youngest, I think, is in their 20s, and the oldest is somewhere like in their 80s and 90s. They've had incredible life experiences. Some of them have had parents who were enslaved. And it's just absolutely phenomenal. So anyway, with that in mind, you talk. You tell me what's been going on. And I know what's been going on, but I want you to tell me more.
I've been locked in trying to finish this next solo exhibition for Blackbird Gallery. So yeah, just the past, since February, I signed, and probably since March, I've just been locked in trying to get as much done as possible.
That's great. I mean, I spoke with Pamela Perry Eaton. Disclaimer, I am also represented by the Blackbird Gallery in Detroit. And I was speaking with Pamela Perry Eatman, who is the owner of the gallery, the gallerist. And I showed her some of William's work, and she was like, "Oh my God." And that was it. That was pretty much about it. In fact, we were talking about that last night. My whole connection to Detroit is my wife is from Detroit. And because of the pandemic, the pandemic brought its gifts as well as its dark things,
Right.
And because of the pandemic, the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club had to meet over Zoom. And that was kind of cool because I'm stuck here in Massachusetts. I can't be in Detroit. So Zoom, the magic of Zoom. And I got to know a lot of a lot of people, and they've become friends, and I think lifelong friends. And as a result, I met Pamela Perry Eatman and was invited to show and be represented by her gallery. And anyway, so on this Afterglow with James Dozier, who he's the unofficial director of the Afterglow. So traditionally with the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club, after they were all done with the showing and the selling, people would just hang around and talk to each other and do some networking. But Afterglow is so much cooler than networking. Networking sounds like too much work and too hoity-toity. And we were talking about, and I brought you up, especially with Takesha Jefferson, who's a phenomenal photographer. She has a connection, believe it or not, to New Bedford. One of her instructors at Auburn State, her favorite art history instructor, happens to be the curator at the Whaling Museum in New Bedford, Naomi Slip.
Wow.
And she said that one of her daughters is, I think she has 4 daughters, is gone into painting. And she started to describe what sounded like a parallel to your life. And I said, you have to get a hold of William. You have to speak with him. And paths don't have to be the same, but he can tell you where the holes are to avoid,
Right.
And how do you feel about this journey of yours? Do you feel, it all depends on how your mind operates, how you make sense of the world. Is it a spiritual thing? Is it a damned if I know thing? Is it, well, I think anybody can do pretty much anything if they just go ahead and do it?
It's funny. It's literally all of the above. Like it really is. It depending on the day and the feeling, and it's really all of the above. Yesterday it was spiritual. Every day it's anybody can do this if they put their mind to it, and it's every other day it's I don't know what the hell I'm doing, so it's all of the above. I see a lot of artists out there, a lot. And the difference I think with me is I know my end goal, and I know what I'm capable of doing. And I just ultimately I think this was what I was supposed to be doing all along. Even though I bypassed it for so long, like I think ultimately this is where I was supposed to be. Just in a way that it happened so quick, right? Like I picked up a brush and been painting for exhibitions ever since. So it's just some artists never get there. So yeah, I think it's kind of it's all of the above.
All right, let's talk about that state of mind. Let's look at it from a spiritual point of view, because I don't know what, and spiritual does not necessarily mean religious in my book. I'll put that out right there. In fact, the older I get, I went to Catholic school for 8 years, and the older I get, the more I realize that it's really quite a simple concept, that if we all are of service to each other, through some family situations when my father became suddenly ill, there's a whole story there. And there are people who've gone through similar things and far worse. But I remember once an emergency room nurse said, "My God, you've been here like every other night. How are you handling this?"
Right.
And I didn't even think about my answer. And I just said, I think if we were of service to each other, it would be a better world. I think that's what the whole purpose of being here for. It's community, And so to me, you can call it the universe, you can call it the cosmos, but it's not some white guy with a white hair and white beard,
Right.
it's not that. That's, it's none of that. That's all irrelevant.
Right.
There is this, man, I can't explain it. There are some days where you can feel a connection to where you are, like you're rooted in this moment. There are other days where you get flashback for, I smelled something the other day and it was like, oh my God, if you could do the special effects from a movie, like you're getting sucked back,
Right.
into the past. And there are other times where in a fraction of a second, you see the future. It's almost like you're going to get hit by the car, but something says, take one step back and the car goes by.
Mhm.
That's my thing. What's your thing?
I'm kind of along the same lines. I believe it's the universe and vibes and some spirits in there and guiding the way. And after I lost my cousin a few years ago, which Don wrote about, that kind of changed my perspective on a lot of things. I ended up getting in touch with a medium who I spoke to a few times that just kind of solidified things for me. And so I move around fully aware of the signs, right? And so that's kind of what guides me and my intuition and yeah, that's what I believe is spiritual. When I it might sound a little weird, but I believe my spirits are guiding me, man. My passed on relative, passed on ancestors, right? And I think if you're just open to these signs, they'll talk to you, right? And it's the answers are there. There's a lot of people get caught up or sidetracked or distracted or whatever the case may be. But that's what I say. It's possible for any of us. We just got to get on that path, right? I mean, it's not easy to get on the path, but it's possible to get on the path. So, yeah, that's
Sometimes you just have to know what exit to take or what on ramp to get onto, right?
right.
And then
What people to separate yourself from.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to tell my art history students that the shamans, back in the Paleolithic period, this incredible art that was put on these cave walls. And I always used to say that the shaman was like a painter because it wasn't their ability to render a reality, but it was their ability to be connected to something beyond reality.
Right.
And I think you sort of like nailed it by what you just said, that, and as I got older and as I'm painting, I swear I feel, well, I forgot what famous artist said that when he's in his studio, these other painters who passed on show up. And that's usually to like nudge him saying, hey, what are you doing? And then when they disappear, it's like, he's good. He's on his own. He's fluctuating. My late father-in-law, Dr. Batchelor, I never met him. He was a sculptor and an internist. And I swear he's in the room with me sometimes. It's just kind of overwhelming, So where did you imagine? I mean, I always bring up this thing about my wife it was not really a challenge, but I took it as one. We were having this heartfelt discussion. She's also an artist, and she said, you've got to decide whether you want to be sustained. And I've said this in many podcasts, whether you want to be sustained by your art or whether you want to be supported by your art. And I said, almost like a 3-year-old, can I have both?
Both,
and
right.
She said, no, you can only pick one. And it wasn't until I decided, well, I can't paint for the money. It's just, it's like cooking for the paycheck and there's no love involved in what you're doing, the taste isn't there, or it is there and it's not the taste you want people to taste, that kind of thing. And so when you started doing this, I mean, what was your intent? Did you think you were going to sell a lot of paintings and be rich, rich or famous or well off?
Well, I do things with intention, right? I never do anything for nothing, right? There's always a for what I do. So when I mean, my intention was always to be a gallery artist, right? I mean, before I picked up the brush, that was my intention, right? So that's why I believe that it came so quick, because I set my mind to that way before I even put it into action. Like I was watching the Basquiat documentaries and Picasso documentaries and all of that well before I started painting, to get my mind there. And so I knew I wanted to be what type of artist I wanted to be. And I wanted to tell stories. Years ago, probably, I can't pinpoint a year, but years ago, I envisioned how I wanted my paintings to look. This rough, urban look. And it's crazy to see that that's what I have today. But it's a mind thing. It's getting your mind there. It's being dedicated. It's being what's the word? I can't think of the word, but yeah, I knew what type of artist I wanted to be. It wasn't just I'm gonna pick up the brush and see what happens. It was
you were painting with intent.
With intent, right? Like I said, a lot of things changed for me after my cousin passed, right? Like I was still doing the illustrations, the graphic design, but even with that, it changed. And
Could you tell us, well, me again, but for people listening for the first time, getting to know you for the first time, tell us that connection with your cousin, what happened?
My say he was my youngest cousin on my mother's side. My cousins are like my siblings, right? Like we have that type of bond. We don't talk every day, but they're like my siblings. I think the year before he passed is we spent the most time together. I think he was graduating high school, and we spent damn near every day together over the summer, boxing matches and all over the place. And he was killed in a drive-by, I want to say 2019. And that was a tough loss. In that moment, so he was shot 3 times, once in the back, twice in the back, once in the head, and he actually was in a hospital for about a week. And I spent a lot of time in that room with him. And in that moment, I thought I might have spent too much time on my own mental sanity, right? And so I still struggle a little bit with that, but that's one of the spirits that I feel is 100% guiding me on this journey. And so I do a lot of what I do is for him and the other people that I've lost along the way. You know, I've lost a lot of people, so it's like I do it for the ones that didn't have a chance, right? Like I know I have this ability, and it would just be a terrible waste if I didn't put it to use, right? And it's just so that's kind of where I'm coming from,
So you're breathing life back into them again.
right?
Um, the Egyptians, a lot of people think the Egyptians built these massive structures, these pyramids, to preserve the body. It wasn't about the body, even though they went through great lengths to
Right.
preserve the body. It wasn't like to preserve the body for life. It was to preserve the memory.
Mhm.
And what is it? The African proverb is, when an elder dies, the library burns down.
Yep.
I think there's another African proverb that says, the last person to speak your name. You die again when the last person speaks your name.
Right.
It dies as well. That's what it is. Yeah. So once that chain is broken,
Right.
it's gone. And I'm thinking about, I'm seeing the images behind you, and I've seen your work. I went to the opening at Co-Creative Center. That was back in March, was it?
January.
Oh, was it January? Oh, that's right. Yeah, you were about a month shy of your 1 anniversary of painting.
Yep.
And I think, that my work has changed dramatically. I was an abstract painter, and I'm doing stuff that it's always about people that are challenged. People in my family, people in my wife's family, historical events. I never could stand the underdog being underrepresented or not represented at all. And there's always a reason for why things are the way they are, and why people end up dying, and why people end up successful, or the why. The because is as important as the why.
Yeah.
Okay. And been trying to get ready for a series of work, and I'm a little bit overwhelmed because there's just so much to squeeze into one painting. And I'm trying to say to myself, okay, you're going to have to take this one concept, instead of trying to pour everything out of your head. I've got this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Each one of those paintings that you think is one piece is probably more than one.
Right.
Because there's no way that you can fit all this, I hate to use the word garbage. A lot of it is garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's horrible garbage. And sometimes I feel like I'm a medium myself, like I'm giving voice to somebody who had no voice, or who had their voice taken away.
Mhm.
And that really was never my intent. I mean, I was a guy who was doing abstract work who said, I'm trying to not show any emotion. I'm just trying to be stone cold, and that didn't work, as a lot of people told me. So the backstory, Rosebud, your Rosebud piece, and why don't these boys, these young boys and men, why don't they have faces? And I remember you saying something that was really, really interesting. Could you share that with us?
The no faces kind of symbolizes just the relatability, and that saying, it could have been any of us, right? I mean, so a lot of times they don't really, it's not an individual thing for us, right? And it's just, like I said, it's a relatability. I have people that tell me, I have this one guy tell me, his son asked him if that was him in one of my portraits, right? And it's so stuff like that sticks with me. Like, I have people tell me, like, in a sense, like I'm big brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so I mean, and that's what I feel like. it's crazy that I have random people tell me that when I have these conversations at home, right? And like, I'm one of the elders on my mom's side, but I'm the youngest on my dad's side for grandkids, right? But I'm still, even on that side, I still feel like one of the elders. Like I have this big brother vibe. And but yeah, the no faces is a relatability thing. We have more things in common than we don't. I think a lot of our stories are very similar. Um, I think the only thing that sets me apart from a lot of people is that I just go for it, right? I set goals and I go for it. That's the only thing that really sets me apart. I mean, I know a lot of people with my story that lost cousins the same way that I have, and witnessed the same things that I've witnessed, and right. So I mean, that's
But
that's
in that too, I mean, this is bizarre. People call it grief bonding, pity bonding. When somebody loses a parent and you've already lost yours, you know what they feel like. Whereas if your parent is still alive and they lose a parent, you're going, damn, I know that day's coming.
right.
So it's how we handle things that makes a difference. Let me ask you a question, because we both, again, from almost opposite sides of the coin. The reactions of white viewers, and I'm going to go by James Baldwin's better definition. He hates the term black and white because he says that's the problem.
Right.
The reaction of African or African American viewers comparative to European American viewers, is there a difference?
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say there's that much of a difference. I've had European viewers that most of the European viewers that speak on my work deal with African American youth in some way, so they relate to it more, and they see their students or their whatever in my paintings, and a lot of the African American viewers, they know exactly where I'm coming from without a word being said, right? So
you get the viewer looking at your work and then they look at you and there's that connection right away. They know.
right.
Know. Yeah.
Fitz, you know Fitz.
Oh, I know Fitz. Yeah.
I just saw him over the week.
Yeah, he scooted in, scooted out, right?
Right. I saw him over the weekend and he described my work to a T. That was my first time meeting the man, So it's like people get it. When you see it, you get it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because when I had my opening at the Blackbird, I believe I'm the only European on her list.
Right.
And I'm dealing with African American subject matter. That's family, my wife's side. And I was ready for the A word. And it's not articulation, it's appropriation.
Right.
And, because, hey, people are people, doesn't matter what the tone of your skin is like. People take offense based on ignorance, based on whatever, stupidity, ignorance. It doesn't matter. Racism. I mean, people are shocked that Black people are racists. Like, really?
Right.
Aren't you surprised there aren't more of them?
Right.
But anyway,
right.
So I was ready for all of that. And the really cool thing about it is that everybody looked at the Charity Ann, which is my enslaved, my wife's enslaved third great grandmother's children, two daughters being sold away from her. And I really got into this woman. We don't know what she looked like. We don't even know her name. We just have a bill of sale. But I really got into this woman's head and tried to figure out how would I feel if that happened to me. Male, female, Black, white, doesn't matter. African, European, doesn't matter. What did it smell like? Could you hear birds? Was it hot? Was there a breeze? All this other stuff. And I really threw myself into it. And when I had an exhibit in Dartmouth in Cape Nerem, there were people that were openly weeping between Steve Remick's work, where we had a show called Reckonings. Steve Remick's nurses, these women were beat up, from COVID.
Yeah.
You could see the tape marks on their faces from holding the mask together in their PPE, personal protective equipment. And then, so they were rattled by that. And then they saw my stuff, and I could tell by the way the heads are tilting and they're looking at the work. And then they read my monograph, and all of a sudden, tears. One woman nearly fainted. Another woman looks like she got sick. She put her hand over her mouth and ran out of the room. But the one person that really drilled the hell out of me was the European guy who turned and looked at me like a scene out of a movie, where I thought, oh my God, flames are going to come out of this man's eyes. And he just looked at me with a hatred I'd never felt in my life. And he just walked out the room. So people who were there and experienced this thing at the opening, when they found out that I had the opening at Blackbird, and they asked me, did anybody cry? Or like, it's kind of an innocent question.
Yeah.
They shared their story. It got them kicked up to remember this relative, the little bit that they know about. And some of them, many of them were artists as well, because it's a huge artist community in Detroit. Wait till you go there, right? And then they started, relating more of their stories. And they said, I think I'm going to jump into this. I got something to portray, to get out there in the world. And one of them, the people that I exhibited with, there was 4 of us. And the other 3 gentlemen, one was from Indianapolis, one was from North Carolina. I think the other one was Georgia. They couldn't make it because it was, close to the holidays. And he had one particular piece, which was weird because his palette was the same color as mine. And people thought his piece was mine. And it was a lynching. And all you could see was from the calves, it was in silhouette, the calves and the feet. And then a stark, a barren landscape. And it was really kind of interesting, that kind of synergy that was in that room. Because, we're all painters.
Right. It must have been interesting. That movie.
Yeah, it was. It was. I was ragged. I mean, there's pictures of me, that a friend that I've gotten to know, a Finnish guy. He's from a European. He's a Finn from Finland, and he took photographs. He goes to all of the DFABC, Detroit Fine Art Breakfast Club meetings and such, and goes to the openings, and he documents everything. And my God, it's like I aged 10 years. I looked like totally exhausted. And half of it was because I was ready to, showdown at high noon, gunfight at high noon kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it was such a totally different atmosphere.
Yeah. From the Dartmouth one, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
And neither one of them was negative, except for that one guy.
Yeah.
Neither one of them was negative, but the communities were so different from each other.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, people don't even say anything to you. They just look at your work and they look at you, and it's like, yeah, I know.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great feeling.
Yeah, it is. It is. When people can pinpoint what you're trying to do without saying anything, it's definitely a great feeling.
Have you ever had them come up to you and tell you, it's like they were standing next to you while you were painting the work? It's the creepiest. I mean, in one way, it's the creepiest thing in the world. And it's like the coolest thing in the world at the same time. There's got to be a word for creepy and cool together, right? But
especially me, because I'm so new. So everything I'm doing is just kind of like on a whim rather than like technical. So when they can explain it, right, it's like, okay, I'm doing something right.
You're connected. You're in that groove. Yeah. How many pieces are you going to have for Blackbird?
Trying to have around 10. I have 6 right now.
Hmm.
So shows July 14th. I had to push it back. I was getting a little stressed. More grays popping up in my beard. So I
I
had
mean,
to push.
are you a goal-oriented guy? In other words, to get you motivated, if somebody says, "Hey, can you have this many pieces of work done by such and such a time?" You go, "Yeah, yeah, no problem," and you do it. You stick to it because you've made a commitment.
Right.
Versus, "Oh, I'm going to do this many pieces," and then that slides and that because things keep getting in the way. Does that happen to you?
Both, once
Okay,
again, both. If Pam had came to me and said, "Let's do X amount," I would
right,
do X amount
right.
and get it done. Right. So now that it's on me, it's kind of, it can fall between 7, 10.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Now let me ask you a question. How do you prepare for your pieces? Because I've been doing a heck of a lot of reading. I don't want to be stupid and I don't want to be ignorant. The difference between the two is ignorant is I don't know any better. Stupid is I do, but ignored it. You know what I mean? Um, and let's bring up that whole wokeness thing, which people get all fuzzy or prickly about. It all depends, right? But I'm really trying to, since I've been doing this, I mean, like behind me, that's a piece of my father. That's probably the most static piece I've ever done, and I don't know, it hasn't grown on me yet. That happens sometimes. It's done, but I'm not done. It's not wrapped around my brain, and that was a moment when he didn't know that within a year's time or less, his entire world was going to change. So this is almost like an iconic moment for him. He thought he was going to be up in Canada forever and ever. And it wasn't until he was told he had to come down and register for the draft, because if he ever came down for a visit, or like if his father died or whatever, he crossed the border, he'd be arrested immediately for draft dodging. And he's like, "What draft? What's a draft?" This is
Yeah,
during the
yeah.
Korean War. So trying to get that backstory, is so important. Trying to get into, I don't know, how do you get yourself prepared? Because that's work too. We may not be painting, but it's all that prep work.
Yeah, the prep work is, I'm trying to fall in love with the process, right? Like it's the prep work is the toughest. Um it comes down to once again, I can't think of the damn word.
I have that happen a lot. Wait till you get to be my age.
Not a dedication, but just
A
I've
focus.
been, yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for about 10 years now, right? So
Mm,
it's a thing of like, I have to get myself going. I have to have a strong motor and just keep going, because that's the only way I get paid is if
yeah,
I
you
put
are
the
the
work in.
boss.
Right. I have to get up and I have to get shit done. So that's kind of my motivation. That's how I get it done. It's just I have to. It's my way of life. My how I make a living. This is, if I wanna if I want things to pan out how I know they can, then I have
Mm,
to get up and I have to do this. Right. Like even if I
mm.
don't. So yeah.
Let's talk about stumbling blocks. I mean, not just not being able to think of a word, but you're working on a piece and it's coming along pretty good, but there's that one thing, and you don't know what that one thing is, but you know that there's that one thing.
Mhm.
I remember when I was doing the Greenwood thing, I needed something in the painting, and I was walking the dog, and I looked up and I saw the telephone pole, and for some reason it's like, are you kidding me? A telephone pole? That's what I need. I put it in there and bang, it was like somebody pulled a plug out of the jug. I mean, it just all came pouring out.
This is another one of the, I'm talking about signs before, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
seeing the signs, being aware that the signs are
Hmm.
there. And last night, I'm working on a painting. What does it need? What does it need?
Yeah.
Telephone pole. I literally said
No,
this
get
last
out of here.
night, right here.
Oh, wow.
And I said, just maybe the.
Oh, I lost your audio. Lost your audio. Yeah. That was
Can you hear
weird.
me?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, it's weird.
All right.
You must have it on directional or something. Yeah.
Yeah, just I said to myself, just maybe a dark silhouette of a telephone pole. Just last night I said that. So I mean, this is another example of the signs right there.
Yeah. The telephone pole turned out to be a bunch of things. Um, and especially with the double bars, that's the Orthodox cross, the Eastern Christian. Um,
Yeah.
and then, they showed up in the Greenwood series that I did. And that's a sure sign of racism, a flame, it's telephone pole. It doesn't matter, it's burning.
Yeah.
And then birds. So the telephone pole became something. The birds were another thing. People like, what kind of birds are they? And like, are those crows? Well, they're black. Well, what are they? They could be blackbirds. They could be starling. I don't know. But birds usually move when something startles them or when they're going to be attacked or whatever. And they're not just there to fill up negative space. They're there to show something. And in one of them, she's screaming and she startles the birds, and the birds are just going in every which way because of her screams. I mean, they're taking away her kids.
Yeah.
And then the other question I get is that a sun or a moon? Yes. What do you mean, yes? It doesn't matter because they're both they're witnesses to what's going on. What is it? The Buddhist saying that the truth cannot be hidden from the sun or the moon.
Mm.
Yeah. I didn't plan on doing that. I mean, have you come into things? I don't want to call it style or method, but if you come into your own language, see, for me, the birds, the moon, the telephone pole, those are part of this language that, this visual language, the symbols and so on and I can see things. So, but I'm asking you,
For the most part, the facelessness, I say, I'm trying to perfect it to a point where, like, I watched this documentary on Rubens, and they said red is Rubens' color. Like nobody can do it like he can, and I want that to be the facelessness for me, right? Like, if you see a faceless painting, like, the difference between his and mine, right? Like, I want to perfect it to that point where it's mine, right? And I like to. I can be a very blunt person, but at the same time, I don't really like to give too much away, right? So it's more of
I mean, there's just so much symbolism with that. I mean, you can pick, it's like, fanning out 5 cards, pick one, anyone. Faceless, because for far too long, African Americans have almost had to become invisible. Because if you're invisible, then nobody's going to give you any, nobody's going to get in your face.
and I can piggyback on that. This is kind of along my kind of just things that stick with me. But as Black kids, there's a lot of Black kids that avoid being good students, right? Like, for instance, like they won't raise their hand because of that attention that it might bring, or they don't. It's like you said, we like to fall under the radar a lot of times because you become targets, right? You can become a target for being
From both ends.
right from exactly,
From both
exactly,
ends. I mean, this colorism, which
exactly.
most people would look at you like, what are you talking about? Yeah. You think racism is one thing? When you couple it up with colorism, but then you have to figure out, you have to learn why there's colorism. Okay, that's just like, I don't even want to go there. But
Right.
the other
Yeah, I
thing, I'm
can.
looking at your faceless, and I say boys as young men, boys, little boys and young men. I mean, males. Let's give it that thing, because again, words carry weight, and especially if people take that wrong. But to a racist, well, they all look the same, so you might as well just obliterate their faces. It doesn't matter who they are. There's no identity. It's just a form, So there's so much really, and I think that's when Pam saw your work. That was it. It was like, I think the breath blew out of her when she saw the work. It spoke instantly, and the other thing I noticed is that most of them are seated, and sitting is symbolic in a lot of ways. And it's not laziness, boredom. Sometimes I think we go back to that invisibility where you sit down and be quiet. Don't speak till you're spoken to. So, there's the whole Black mother, African-American mother, raising her son specifically. This, in European or African culture, mother-son bonds are much, and father-daughter, but raising their children to survive them, which unfortunately, and from your family, it doesn't always work out that way. But your work looks so innocent. And what I mean by innocent is like, if you were to look at it, it's like, oh, and then, oh, it starts, like, I don't want to call it blooming, or what are some of the comments that people have made of your work?
Oh man, it vary, man. Once again, just the relatability, just like this one. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
like
Yes, yeah.
that's a picture. That's an image of my grandmother's living room, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who can't relate to that? And then especially as like my family's going through, my grandmother passed, and gonna be selling the house, and I know so many families, Black families, that can relate to that, right? And just
That's a safe place. That's a sanctuary.
right, right.
If
That
your
was my safe.
family, if
That
your
was
mother and
my
father were
safe.
falling apart, at least you would have that backup. And then you had the kids who didn't have that backup. So it went to an aunt or an uncle. And if they didn't have that,
Right,
that's when you have that lost generation.
right, right.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, this one up here,
Yeah.
old self portrait of myself, on my grandmother's front steps, right?
Yeah.
Like I call it the 5th of November. That's my birthday. Um, that one, I mean, this is my favorite right here. I mean, that's me. Um,
Yeah. I'm losing audio on you. Yeah. For some reason, I think your mic is on directional or something like that.
oh,
So
okay.
yeah. No, not a problem. So that's your favorite. It's
Yeah,
a patterned, it's a high back chair
yeah,
with large flowers, almost like tropical kind of flowers. And then it's kind of reflected in the shirt, sweatshirt, long sleeve sweatshirt. And what does it the graphics say on it?
It's a Guess, you
Oh,
know,
Guess.
the
Okay, yeah, Guess. Yeah, the name brand. Yeah, yeah.
and it says USA on it.
Hmm.
But I entitled it Byproduct, right? So I mean, think I'm a byproduct, right? I mean, what is a byproduct? I mean, it's
Hmm.
something you get by accident when you're trying to produce something else, right? I
Hmm.
mean, their intention for me was never to be what I am, right? So in that case, I'm a byproduct, and
Yeah.
so that's what I
You
entitled
weren't the
that.
direct result or the something like that. Yeah.
I was an accidental result of
Yeah.
what they were intending to.
Yeah. And I can relate to that. My mother and father, uh, they were just two people stumbling around in the dark. And, they did something back then was almost considered almost as bad as an interracial marriage. It was different, uh, cultures, French, Canadian, and Portuguese. Oh my God.
Oh wow, yeah,
And one thinking the other was the horrible one, that kind of thing. It just wasn't done. But after the war, more and more of those walls started to come down. But when marriages were in trouble back then, people were like, "Oh, a baby will make it better." Yeah,
right.
right.
Yeah,
So
no.
I was thought of myself as a glue baby. Uh, so it is funny.
I'm talking more along the other lines of like America and what America's intentions for us were. But yeah,
Oh
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
oh yeah. I understand where you're going with that. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't think their intentions were ever for people like me to thrive here, right? I mean, so
Yeah, that's and I'm still waiting. I mean, Titus Kafar, Kaheli, um, Kaheli, blanking out on his last name. Oh wow, wow, wow. Starts with a W. He did the
Kehinde Wiley,
Kahende Wiley,
yeah,
yeah. Um they're they've come really, really close on stuff. I mean, Titus Kafar, cutting out the children from the portraits, the very
mm,
normal, a mom sitting on a park bench with a child on her lap, and the child is cut right out of the canvas. Missing children.
yeah,
But I think there's still more to come. I think
oh
there's
yeah,
still way more to come. And Don Wilkinson, when I did changed over from abstract to the work that I'm doing now, um, said he was very complimentary about the work, and then he said, but who's going to want to hang that misery on their walls
mm,
unless they have some relationship to it, some connection to it? He
yeah,
said, I think you'd probably be better off, seeing if you could get the stuff in museums and stuff.
mhm.
um your work isn't your work is um not that in your face. It's very gentle. It sort of creeps up on you.
Right.
um
And that's
are you
intentionally as
pushing
well.
that dial yet?
Yeah, that's intentional.
Mhm. Are you afraid? I hate to use that word, but are you afraid to push that dial? Are you afraid to notch it up to the place that you don't want to go to or want to go to, but are afraid to go to? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I think it's a timing thing.
Hmm.
Um, for me personally,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, once again, everything goes back to even before I started painting and making these intentional decisions and um, going back to my cousin and wanting to portray some type of story without getting too graphic, right? So that's kind of where that um, not wanting to Yeah, I guess I set that barrier earlier, right? So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
for
Hey, we gotta
now.
start wrapping this up. I can't believe how much time is. I mean, it's just flown by. It feels like we've only been talking for 5 minutes. Um, but I always try to ask, one of those questions at the end. Question that I hope nobody would ask me, because you gotta really think about it. And sometimes people is just like bang right off the bat. They answer the question. It's like, so the one I'm gonna pick right now is, so how has this changed your life?
How has this changed my life?
Yeah, how has painting changed your life? Painting specifically.
Oh man. Well, I still do some graphic work on the side, so it's still kind of. But I mean, I have a little bit of anxiety when I paint a little bit because it's still early, but I'm way more at peace doing this than anything else that I've done. It brings me way more satisfied doing this
Mm-hmm.
than anything else. And the fact that I can earn a living doing this is amazing. Right? So, I mean, um, yeah, I'm much more at peace than I
Yeah.
was before.
Yeah. It takes a while. And I think what it is getting the poison out of your system.
Right. Right.
Even though you're not really conscious of that poison.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it really does get it out. And it's not like, with abstract work, people, the abstract expressionists, everybody thought it was like the angry white men, slashing at the canvas and stuff like that.
Right.
For me, it was never like that. It was all about composition. It's just like somebody who practices they're a musician. They practice scales. That's all it was. And you're always trying to perfect the scales. You're always trying to nudge it up a notch, But wow. So, last question, so that you can look back on this podcast in a year or so from now, or 10 years or whatever. What do you think the next step is going to be, William?
Next step. I have some things in the works. Not sure if I can particularly say.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been talking to Kathleen Hancock,
Okay.
so I'll just
Oh,
leave it
get
at
out of
that.
here. The I never remember the name of that gallery correctly. It's at BCC. It's in the
Grimshaw, something.
Grimshaw
Yeah,
Gudowitz. Yeah. Wow, that's a nice space too.
yeah, that's a very nice space. So, couple years,
Yeah.
but
You know what? And this may be what's the word? Presumptuous of me, but I would like to exhibit with you at some point.
oh, absolutely, we got
Yeah.
to make that happen.
Yeah, we gotta come up with a theme or something like that. I'm working with a friend of mine, Bob Brodesky, on something similar. Too much to explain, but we're going to work on the specific theme without knowing what each other is doing, and we won't find out until the day we show up at the opening and see
Oh
what we
wow,
did. Yeah. It could be a disaster. I mean, who knows? But I think it'd be sort of cool. Huh?
Where's this going to be?
I'm hoping it'll be at the New Bedford Whaling Museum at this
Okay.
point. And again, too much to go into, but the gist of it is that Bob is going to get into the head of Ahab, because his painting is got that vibe to it.
Right.
And then I'm going to get into the head of the whale, into Moby Dick, which
Wow.
is kind of harder in a way, because it's a whale, right?
Right.
But it's not.
No,
And it's
yeah, I
not.
know. Yeah.
And I think what he will discover is what I'm going to discover, that appearances can be deceiving. Everybody thought that whale represented this and that he represented that. No, there's a deeper story to that. So I know we've already presented the concept just verbally to people who could make this thing happen, and they're like, "Whoa!"
Yeah,
So speaking with you, I think we could land definitely on something like this.
for sure.
Yeah. Hey, my friend, thank you so much. So happy to have met you way back when. And then to finally have met you. I didn't get to meet you in person until the opening in January.
Right.
Yeah, because of the pandemic and everything else like that. And to see how you weren't the flash in the pan. You just kept going and going, and that's fantastic. That's really fantastic. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to Detroit this summer. We always try to go June, July, and then go to and go in for Christmas. So if I can sell a couple of pieces to pay for the trip,
Oh yeah. I
I definitely want to be there. I definitely want to, because I love Detroit. Have you ever been?
I've never been.
Oh wait, you're gonna love this place. And if you can try to get it so you can go to a DFABC. I haven't done that yet because our schedule it's like always holiday or something like that, right?
Right.
DFABC live meetings and meet Henry Harper and
Right.
all those other people. Oh my God, it's really a love fest.
Definitely going to try to do that, man. I'm excited for real. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about Detroit so far.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much. And folks, that wraps up another episode of the In Focus podcasts, brought to you by the South Coast Artist Index. Till the next time, folks, be nice to each other. It really does help. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.